I think we should probably let everyone in. Is that about right? Yeah, okay. There's a admit all button somewhere. Great. Morning, everyone. We'll just wait for 30 seconds or so, just to let everyone into the room. Still a few people connecting by the look of it. Right, I think we should make a start. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to EAMS. This is the last session I'll be chairing, I think. And so I'd like to start by thanking my co-hosts, Christian and Chris, for all their work in setting this up and pushing it on. It's been a thoroughly interesting 2 weeks, and I've actually quite enjoyed this format, even though it's not quite the same as meeting you all in person. Thank you all for showing up so regularly and continuing to show up. We've got a large group of people here today and 3 very interesting talks. So the first thing, please could you, I'm just going to quickly share my screen for anyone who's new. Please could you put your questions into the chat session for today. I will copy that into the chat. Christian's already done that. So please try to avoid the Zoom chat for questions because they get lost and we can have answers on the Moodle afterwards. So thank you for doing that. We've got 3 pre-recorded lightning talks. The first is from Miriam Wengel and Johan Frank and David Obermeier from Mannheim in Germany. Student Start DE, our web-based pre-course in mathematics for engineering students. So this is a pre-recorded talk and we have the presenters online to answer questions later. Christian.
Hello and welcome to our talk on Studienstart.de, our web-based pre-course in mathematics for engineering students. My name is David Obermeier. I'm working for the Optus project at DHBW Mannheim in Germany, and this talk is joint work with Dr. Miriam Weigel from the CMAT at DHBW Mannheim and Johann Franke, who's also working for the Optus project in Mannheim. The DHBW is the Baden-Württemberg Cooperative State University, which offers a dual system with practical and theory terms. At the location in Mannheim, it offers courses in the faculties of Business and Technology, and at the moment there are approximately 6,300 students enrolled in Mannheim, and we have over 2,000 companies that are training partners. The learning material for our pre-course was developed by the Optus project, which is a joint project funded by the German Federal Ministry of Education and Research, and it's quality packed for teaching. On the bottom right you can see the universities and institutions that are involved in the Optus project. The online study preparation in mathematics at our university is open for self-registration from June 1st each year, and our pre-course is directed at students in technical degree programs like electrical, mechanical or industrial engineering, mechatronics or computer science. Our pre-course is structured as you can see in this diagram. After registration, students have to do the diagnostic pre-test that's covering all subjects of the course. The result then leads to a learning suggestion, helping students to decide which topics to focus on. After the pre-test, the students can see the online learning material consisting of learning modules, tests and trainings that can be used for self-study. In addition to this, we offer e-tutored courses and face-to-face courses for students that need more support. In the first week of the semester, there's a mandatory final test for the students of the technical faculty that is comparable to the pre-test. The results in the pre- and the post-tests are used to evaluate and improve our pre-course. As mentioned, there are 3 ways to use our online learning material. From June on, students can use it for self-study with self-assessment. There is also a forum where students can ask questions and discuss problems. In September there are also online courses that are supervised by an e-tutor. During these e-tutored courses, students work on one specific subject each week, and every week they get a problem sheet for the current subject that is later corrected by the e-tutor. In addition to that, there are also classic face-to-face courses in September and November that are 1 or 2 weeks long. The basic curriculum of our pre-course consists of these 7 courses. Courses 1 to 6 are a repetition of the secondary school curriculum, and Course 0 is a summary of mathematical basics for students who have problems with mathematical language and symbols, set theory, or sets of numbers. There are also 5 advanced courses with subject-specific content that in part deal with topics that are also part of first year's mathematics lecture. Also, these courses are not equally important for all fields of study. The courses Logic and Stochastics are new in 2020. Each of our courses is structured in the same way. There is a small pre-test to figure out in which part of the course's subject the student might have problems. Then there's the learning material that is split into 3 to 5 learning objectives with a training for each learning objective. And at the end there's a randomized post-test to check whether the student has mastered the course's subject now. Our pre-course was developed following the didactical concepts of Bloom, Baumgarten, Meyer and the Conference of Ministers of Education from 2012, and the minimum requirements catalogue in the mathematics by the Koch Group, which is a German group comparable to the CEFI network. While developing our material, we tried to keep the content precise and clear in presentation with many animations, examples and exercises. We also try to offer controlled learning paths by using examples and exercises with detailed feedback on the solution. We now take a brief look at our online material before we move to the evaluation part of this talk. Our pre-course is available to everyone who is interested at our website that you can see on this slide. As you can see, we're not using Moodle but Elias as learning management system. This is the view after the diagnostic entry test. Here are all our courses. If we enter a course now, for example course 4, functions, for which I already did the course's pre-test, we end up at the regular course page. Here we have at the top links to the forum, to a page with special notations for this course, and a timetable to help students manage their time. Down here we have the different learning objectives, each with learning module and training. Apparently I have a major problem with rational functions and root functions, so let's enter that learning module. I already worked through parts of the material and the current chapter is on polynomial functions. And here we can, for example, see an animation made with GeoGebra where we can change the degree and coefficients of a polynomial and look at the graph. And down here we have a single choice question on symmetry and zeros of polynomial functions that can be evaluated, and in addition we can expand a detailed solution down here. So after looking at the learning module, let's jump into the training. In the training we have a mixture of standard Elias questions like this single choice question and stack questions like this one, where we have to calculate the vertex of a given parabola. At the top of each stack questions one can expand a list with information on the input syntax to avoid input errors. Because we focus a lot on giving constructive feedback, we use stack not only for randomizing variables and plotting, but especially for giving specific feedback on common mistakes and award partial points. So for example, if we swap the x and y value of the correct answer and evaluate, we get the feedback that we indeed swapped the x and y value of the correct answer, and our answer gets counted as partially correct instead of just incorrect. We continue with the evaluation of our pre-course program. In 2019 we had 748 first-year students at the technical faculty. 582 of which used our online material in some way. Our online material in 2019 consisted of 11 courses with 35 learning modules and trainings, and stack questions have been added to the trainings of 4 courses, so we have 13 trainings with a mix of stack and standard ELIAS items such as single choice, multiple choice or closed questions. Here we see the development of the number of participants of the pre-course over the years. As you can see, the percentage of students that take part in our pre-course is pretty stable between about 75 to 80%, which is a pretty good value in our opinion. Reaching the inactive 20% and motivating them is pretty tough in our experience due to students getting their contracts too late for participating in the pre-course, or some of our training partners not being aware of our mathematics study preparation, or students thinking they just don't need a maths pre-course. In this chart we compare the average results of the pre and the post test of students who did use the online learning material in some kind, corresponding to the green bars, and the average results of the post test of students who did not take part in the pre-course. We can see 2 things here. First, we see that students who used the learning materials did improve their results from the pre to the post test. So students can really improve their maths abilities through the pre-course. Secondly, we see the students who didn't use the pre-course have a much worse post-test result than students who used our material. In part, this can probably also be linked to weaker students getting their contracts later than better students and therefore not being able to participate in the pre-course. The overall increase of points in 2019 was probably because we updated the test in this year and replaced some rather involved questions with more straightforward tasks. Let's look at the effect of tests and trainings on the gain score, which is the difference between post and pre-test result. In this chart we look at the risk group of students whose entry test results were below 50%, corresponding to the orange bars, in comparison to students with entry test results above 50%, corresponding to the darker green bars. From this we see that all students, and especially students of the risk group, benefit greatly from performing tests, and that all students are able to increase their post-test results even more if they perform more tests and trainings. So, as expected, formative assessment has to play a major role in study preparation. We also did a survey on the whole pre-course and online material that was filled in by approximately 20% of the students participating in the pre-course, and that gave us an overall positive feedback. So lessons we learned from that and the last years of pre-courses are that students get along very well with the online material and like the online tests and trainings. Especially they like the combination of different question types and the immediate detailed feedback. Also we learned that students don't use the forum much but prefer to write emails. Furthermore, we learned that students often have problems managing their timetable and that the motivation of the students decreases over the time. So these problems can often be solved by having e-tutored courses. And finally we learned that the gain score increases with the amount of testing. That was our talk on our pre-course at the Cooperative State University in Mannheim. Thanks a lot for your interest, and now please feel free to pose your questions.
Okay, time for questions, folks. Let's have a look at the forums. Well, let me start by asking what your future plans are for this, how you plan to expand this work. Do I need to unmute? Where are we?
Okay, so talking about the future is a bit problematic, I think, because the our project, the Optus project in which I'm working, is finished at the end of this year. So probably Miriam has to say something about the future because she's keeping on working.
Yes, so to the end of this year, we will finish all our online courses and materials such as statistics and logic. These are the new courses. And then in the future, we will just use the courses and yes, have our online courses with less stuff and yeah.
There is this big question about sustainability of these kinds of projects and ongoing maintenance and development and so on. We've had various projects in the UK over the years that have come and gone, and it's very difficult to curate and maintain things after the project is ended. No easy answers to that. Okay, please folks do post your questions in the forum if you have any. There's a question here from Chris Jobbings. Is the quality of the tests and training maintained to the actual course?
Sure. We're during the pre-course, we're there all the time. So sometimes students actually still find mistakes, although we have many feedback loops, but there's still sometimes some problems with the questions, but most of the times they're minor, I think. We sometimes have problem with the competitive, with our stack questions, that everything is compatible because Elias is not as smooth as Moodle, is my feeling at least. Yeah, but most of the time everything works fine, yeah.
Yes, and our partner universities, they also give us feedback before we put our materials online. So there are yeah, really a lot of mathematicians and didactics that look after our materials, so that we really avoid errors.
Well, thank you very much, folks. That's a fascinating project, and it's been going on for some time, and I sincerely hope it's valuable into the future. Let's move on to our second talk. We have Vesna Perrick from University of Southampton, who's going to give us an update on their e-assessment. So Christian, again, we can start the talk.
I am Vesna Perisic, originally from Croatia, now from Southampton. I will say a few words about what is going on in terms of e-assessment in the School of Mathematics at the University of Southampton. In the focus of my talk is our STACK project, and the names of the people involved with the project are given on this slide. Outline of my presentation is as follows. Where are we with e-assessment, feedback, and the STACK project? Where are we going with e-assessment, and the references? So, where are we with e-assessment? Over the last 3 years, we have been using e-assessment in coursework and for formative assessment in Year 1 and Year 2 modules for mathematics and engineering students. For example, Calculus Driving Test was developed to support students' transition to the higher education, that is, to prevent students from forgetting their A-level material. It's still relevant. This year, for the first time, a final exam was an e-assessment exam. Mainly, we have been using Davis, with the brilliant technical support provided by the Davis team at the UVE Bristol. Thanks, Rhys. Rationale behind the STACK project is to use e-assessment for computational tasks and to free up time to provide high-quality one-to-one assessment and feedback on more cognitive tasks higher up in Bloom's taxonomy, to the first-year students in their weekly problem sheets. The project is aiming to resolve the long-standing frustration with feedback or feedback graveyard, called so by Naomi Winston in her keynote lecture at the CHEP Festival of Learning and Teaching last year in Southampton. Feedback is essential for student learning. Giving feedback is time-consuming, resource-intense, and often ignored by the students. How to design an effective feedback process is a long-standing problem. First, let me describe our current practice with Year 1 Maths module. A student submits weekly coursework. The coursework gets marked and returned to the student. Many students do not collect their marked work and hence don't act on the feedback given and miss a valuable learning opportunity. Our proposal to redesign the weekly problem sheets is as follows. For the computational questions, we want to use e-assessment system, STACK this time, where feedback is embedded, immediate, tailored, and hence impossible to avoid. For the proof-based question, our scenario requires a human marker. A student who has answered a proof-based question will take it to one of the human markers, who will mark the question together with the student, providing a high-quality one-to-one feedback. A similar and by students well-received approach we use in a first-year maths module for engineering students, so-called self-paced module. We have received money from the faculty to pay PhD students to code the questions. Talking about human markers, this is a pre-COVID scenario. Maybe we will need to revisit and rethink this part of the project. Project realization. We have recruited PhD students for the team. We have organized STACK training. We have identified multivariate calculus as the most appropriate Year 1 module to start with. The lecturer, the module lead for the multivariate calculus, has selected the questions appropriate for coding, and the coders have started with coding. We use MS Teams and Teams channels for discussions and to deal with challenges on our way. The project will be piloted in the coming academic year. Where are we going with the assessment? COVID, the virus, made the assessment a must. We see increased activities around the assessment nationally and internationally. I assume we in Southampton will continue with what we have started to implement our new feedback design with other modules. There are challenges in what the assessment can do and what it still cannot do. I'm very excited about where we'll be with the assessment in 2 years' time, the time of the next EAMS conference, I hope. Is everyone happy with e-assessment provision? Let me quote Charles Babbage. Propose to an Englishman any principle or any instrument, however admirable, and you will observe that the whole effort of the English mind is directed to find a difficulty, a defect, or an impossibility in it. If you speak to him of a machine for peeling potatoes, he will pronounce it impossible. If you peel a potato with it in front of his eyes, he will declare it useless because it will not slice a pineapple. A few references that I have been used and that I'm using. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. So I think it's unusual, Vesna, for individual institutions to have systems in parallel like that. So would you like to just, can I start asking by asking you to compare the two? An honest appraisal?
So I think we don't have right now much experience with Stuck. We started earlier with Davis, and that is basically, I met the Karen and Reese at some conference, and when they presented their project, I thought, oh, we can use this straight away with our engineering students. And I kind of have seen that we wouldn't need a long preparation for kind of implement in our setting, because I kind of saw a lot of parallel things going on. So we started with the Davis, and I think they gave us really great support whenever we kind of stuck with anything. So we organized, kind of couple of us were starting coding questions, and whenever something was on our way, they immediately reacted, even from their holidays, so that was really amazing. So however, the question is, so where to go? So when you kind of resolve all these kind of engineering questions, problems, then kind of going to, I teach analysis in the second year. I'm thinking all the time in which way to use e-assessment. What is the time commitment? We don't have a team who is kind of developing it. It is like our hobby on the top of what we do. So that is a bit difficult in that sense to see. And I think suggestion was a Stuck, to try a Stuck, because people were asking, okay, where are we going to be in 10 years times, in 5 years times? So how long all these systems are going to go, and for how long we are making these changes that we are making. And I think that motivated us then to start. I do think that we will continue the current project that we have in Davis, that we will continue, because it really works well. And so I think that people are also impressed for this, our calculus driving test. The students need to pass it before they do their calculus exam. And pass is again 80% they need to get. And so it was everything so the students couldn't kind of argue, oh, the system didn't work, I did, but so it was really so technically perfect that I think for this smoothness and the questions are there, the system is set, we will continue with that. And also this time was ad hoc, first time that engineering department asked us to organize final exam, because it's a first year and then some didn't have exam, or how we are going to have exam. And the engineering department asked us to organize final exam, and that was then ad hoc organized and went quite smoothly.
Thanks very much. What I think we'll do is we'll move on to the next lightning talk, and Vesna, we may have time to come back for further questions from colleagues at the end of the session, which I can't see any currently. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce our third lightning talk for today from Yasuyuki Nakamura and Takahiro Nakahara from Japan, talking about sharing Stack experiences through Sakai. Christian, if you're ready.
Hello, my name is Yasuyuki Nakamura from Nagoya University, Japan. I'm one of the Japanese translator of Stack, and also we developed Math Input Interface for Stack, which is included in the case study booklet published by Chris. The title of my today's talk is Sharing Experiences Using Stack Connected from Sakai through LTI. This work is collaborated with my colleague, Mr. Nakahara, who is an engineer from Sangensha LLC. And I would like to thank Miss Ito and Miss Fujimoto, who are my students, for helping me create questions for Stack. This is the contents of my today's talk. Firstly, I'm talking about my motivation, why I use LTI to access to Stack. And let me briefly show what LTI is. Then I'm showing how I set up Moodle and Sakai. After that, let me show a couple of examples of use of Stack from Sakai. Lastly, I mention about some small difficulties and summarize my talk. Let me talk about motivation, why I use LTI to access Stack. I have a calculus class with 70 students and marked assignments by hand for first 4 weeks. Actually, it takes hours to mark, and I would like to automate where I can automate. Namely, I thought about using e-assessment system for mathematics. Nagoya University's offshore learning management system is Sakai, and there is no plugin for e-assessment for mathematics, as far as I know. On the other hand, I have a Moodle server with Stack outside the university. Therefore, I could have students use the server. But I didn't want students to have more ideas. Then I decided to use Stack from Sakai through LTI. Then what is LTI? LTI, Learning Tools Interoperability, is an education technology specification developed by the EAMS Global Learning Consortium. It specifies a method for learning system to invoke and to communicate with external systems. For example, LMS may use LTI to host course content and tools provided by external systems on a website without requiring a learner to log in separately on the external systems. So let me show how I set up LTI connection from Sakai to Moodle. I set Moodle as LTI provider, which provide course of Moodle, and I set Sakai as LTI consumer, from which students can access to Moodle. For the preparation as a provider for Moodle, firstly, LTI plugin should be switched on in the Manage Authentication page. Then, Published as LTI tools should be switched on in the Manage Enroll Plugins page. After the setting, I moved to my course page and receive information for LTI connection. Some of this information should be copied and pasted on the LTI consumer site. Next is the preparation as a consumer for Sakai. Firstly, External Tools tab in the Site Info page should be opened. Then, by clicking on the Install LTI 1.1 tool link, information should be filled in. Tool title is the name of external tool that are currently set, and any name can be allowed. Bottom text is the name that will appear on the sidebar. This window is a continuation of the previous page. I didn't switch on this check mark because my Moodle server is located outside the university network, and I didn't want any personal information of students to be stored in the external server. This window is also a continuation of the previous page. Launch URL and secret key is copied and pasted. Lastly, tool link should be set by clicking Create Tool Link. We can select the name of the tool link which we created. Then, by switching on the Add Site link, the tool button stack can be created. Now we can connect stack by selecting this button. As you can see, Moodle site is shown inside Sakai, and now students can use stack without being prompted for a password. Let me show some examples of use of stack from Sakai. This is a sample question of differentiation of exponential function. Submitted answer is assessed correctly. Next is an example of the access to stack from Sakai by using iPhone. Not Safari but Google Chrome is used as a browser. Students can submit an answer and submit handwritten notes by clicking this camera icon and by taking a photograph of the notes. If students use iPad, they can submit notes too. When they click on the notes icon, the notepad is opened on another tab, and students can write calculation to the device directly with a tablet pen. So far, students can use stack without big problem, but some difficulties should be mentioned. Firstly, sometimes we can't access to stack from Sakai, being prompted for a username and password for authentication. This problem happens when we use Safari on browser, on Mac, iPad, and iPhone. In order to check available environments, we summarize the accessibility to stack from several devices and browsers. As a result, we can use Google Chrome on any devices, and it is most certain to use Windows. The other small difficulty is to merge students' grade. To tell the truth, I can't find a way to merge students' grade on Moodle into Sakai. Then I made a mapping table between students' ID on Sakai and Moodle account. Then I can merge students' grade by using this mapping table, which is actually not so a troublesome work, but it's not automatic work. Let me summarize today's talk. We prepared an environment where students can access to stack from Sakai, that is the official university's LMS. There are some restrictions to access stack from Sakai, for example Safari on Apple's devices. There is no students who can't access stack. Students are happy to use stack because of instant feedback. For grading in the end of semester, results of marking on stack should be merged to grade sheet on Sakai by using mapping table between student's ID on Sakai and Moodle account. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, I have to say that the LTI has certainly been invaluable to me in Edinburgh. We use Blackboard and we connect up Blackboard to Moodle to give our students access to Stack through our institutional learning environment. And it's fascinating for me to reflect over the period of time that I've been involved in this. Stack version 1, I wrote everything. It was a complete standalone system. Version 2, I tried to insert the question into the quiz, right? To abstract a question type out and allow people to insert questions into quizzes. And that really didn't work at all. I mean, it proved very difficult to separate out the question from the quiz and almost impossible to modify quiz environments to accept random question external question types. LTI seems to be a good level at which to connect things up, right? Connecting a question into a quiz just doesn't seem to be the right level to do things. It's taken three goes to get that right, and I think a lot of people use LTI. Christian, you use LTI for numbers, don't you? And I think Gowis, do you use LTI? You must do, right? I mean, it's one of those standards, and it's just invaluable for all of us. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you for going through that. Can I ask how you showed students uploading photographs of their work?
Yeah.
So did you modify Stack to do that, or is that part of Sakai?
Actually, we've developed plugin for Moodle. So actually, the note submission function is implemented as a question behavior plugin for Moodle quiz module. So therefore, you can use it not only for Stack, but also for another question type, like multiple choice question type.
Right.
So, yeah.
So for those people, would you like to explain what the difference between a question and a behavior is?
I'm sorry?
So not everyone here uses Moodle. So can you explain what the difference between a question and a behavior is?
Actually, I'm not a Moodle expert, so it's a bit difficult to explain, but question behavior is, for example, when students submit answer, so the feedback is returned immediately or after the question or something like that. We can manage the timing of the feedback when the feedback is returned. So that's what I understand for the question behavior.
So it's a kind of layer that sits between the question and the quiz, is that right?
I think so, but I'm not sure.
Can I invite Tim to comment, since I think he designed the system?
Yes. So it was basically a matter of working out what was going on. So the distinction made is the question type is what the question is. What is the task we're asking the student to perform? And the question behavior is the kind of workflow that the student will go through. So you might have a classic exam is what Moodle would call a deferred feedback workflow. The student inputs an answer and submits the whole quiz, and sometimes later they get all the feedback. But then the kind of behavior we're more interested in here, I would imagine, is what Moodle calls interactive behavior, where they input an answer, they get the feedback immediately, and if they've got it wrong, we can let them have another try, and they keep going till they get it right. And in designing this, the difficult thing was basically to find, it was like diagonalizing a matrix. You want these concepts to be as orthogonal as possible so any behavior can work with any question type. And that's not quite possible, but they're almost orthogonal concepts if you view them in the right way. So that's, and when I did this, really we had about 3 or 4 behaviors in Moodle that we wanted to work. And I thought, well, I'm putting in all this effort, but this is the only behaviors we're ever going to have or need. And then, you know, ever since then, people have come up with these really excellent behaviors. Like this note-taking one is brilliant. I really hope that one can be published in the Moodle plugin database, because I think a lot of people would like it.
Well, that would be my next question.
Please give us the plugin.
So just as I didn't realize it was difficult to separate out the question from the quiz, this layer between the question and the quiz, this behaviors layer, as Tim has just said, is a very elegant abstraction, and we've seen a classic example here. So are you able to contribute that to the plugins database?
Yes, I'd like to. I can discuss with my colleague, Mr. Nakahara. Yeah.
Thank you. Good.
Thank you.
Right, other questions from some colleagues on the forum. Let me have a quick look. So, images in students' responses. Okay, well, that was everyone's asking about that. External LTI provider. So, did your university have any concerns about LTI provider being outside your university?
I don't know, actually. I'm not administrator of the university's LMS, so I'm not sure, sorry.
Okay, so in Europe, we have big concerns about data and where the data goes. So I think Sam is asking the question based on our concerns here. Perhaps they're not concerns. So if you don't transfer names from, to MiddleStack, how do you identify the individual grades?
Actually, there is the Moodle account is automatically generated, which uniquely corresponds to student's ID for Sakai. So, but however, I don't know which account corresponds to which students. Therefore, I ask students to tell me their own account, which appears on the course screen.
Okay.
So this is my very manual.
So human process. Okay, that's not ideal, is it?
Yeah.
All right. Let me just check there's no more questions in the Zoom chat. And as before, as at your previous talk with this very elegant Flick interface, you've surprised me again with a very elegant design in the behavior. So thank you for a very interesting third talk to this session, and I'm sure we'll be in touch. Thank you to all the speakers. I think I'm going to just answer all the questions. I think we'll call a halt here. Christian, Chris, any comments?
Well, we could talk about what's happening this afternoon.
Yes, thank you. Yes, so yeah. So this afternoon we have the final session. Let me just share my screen briefly just to round off. Thank you, Christian, for that reminder. Where are we? So the last session this afternoon, we will be talking about implementing large-scale mathematical examinations, and then we'll draw our conference to an end. So I hope to see you all later this afternoon for the final session. Thank you very much.
And for the people that can't make the final session because of time zones, I'll just say the information now that I'm going to say this afternoon, which is that the conference Moodle website will remain open until the end of the year, so until December 31st. And we'll be preparing a proceedings archive of the recordings of the talks and selected material. But we will be contacting people to check that they're okay with anything they've posted being included in that. So we'll be in contact with people that have written questions or written answers on the Moodle website. I think that's it.